All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant-at-Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, we are very pleased this morning to again have with us Reverend Howard Travers of New Life Church in Salisbury, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 37th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Good morning. Would you join me in prayer? Almighty God, creator and sustainer of all life, we give you thanks and praise for the gift of this new day. It's a day which affords us new opportunities to begin again, to love more deeply, and to serve more humbly. As we begin this day filled with both duties and challenges, we're encouraged in knowing that your mercies and your grace are new. Forgive us of our past, for we all have one. Walk with us in our present, and grant us the bright and glorious future that you have promised all of us. Thank you for the gift of liberty and responsibility as leaders of this great state, and as we prepare for the work ahead of us today, we look to you to guide our words and our actions. Let discernment over the difficult issues of our day be wise. Grant us strength to persevere in the ways that make for peace. And on this St. Patrick's Day, a day in recognition of a patron saint's wondrous accomplishments for good, open our eyes that we might see the goodness in what we do here in this room today. Open our ears that we may hear your voice and the will of all your people. Open our hearts that we might be compassionate in what we do. Grant us your wisdom and direction that we might know the right decisions to make. Grant us your strength that we might resist that which draws us away from good and fair judgment. We humbly ask that you strengthen our courage here today, strengthen our resolve today to stand up in defense of those difficult issues we know to be just. Guard and protect our families as we're separated from them to accomplish your work today. And may we ever be mindful that among them is our greatest work seen and known. We may never fail to serve them to the best of our human abilities also as instruments of your love and peace, that when evening comes and our duty here is done, we may know the deep contentment of work completed today, which honors our great state, honors our nation, makes proud our family, and glorifies your name. Amen.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District. Oh, or excuse me, 38th District. 38th District.
I'll join the senator from District 37 in greeting and the return of Pastor Travers here and all your good work back home. We're excited to have you on this crossover Friday. So welcome, and I'd like to journalize Pastor Travers' prayer.
Without objection, Senator, most certainly we will journalize the pastor's wonderful invocation this morning, and we thank him for joining us today and are honored by his presence. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? Appears so. Clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Exciting day. A happy, busy Friday ahead. Let's go ahead and start with our resolution. If we could, the senator from the 32nd District. We have a resolution to do here.
Thank
a great
you, Mr.
group. Oh, so, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. This year, Catholic Charities of Baltimore is celebrating its 100th anniversary. In 1923, the agency was incorporated by organizing the 12 previously separate services under a common mission. Over the past century, the organization has grown to include over 80 programs across 200 locations throughout Maryland, with sites in Allegheny County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Frederick County, Garrett County, and Harford County. They serve children and families, immigrants, individuals with intellectual disabilities, and people living in poverty, and seniors. With over 1,800 employees, 8,000 volunteers, and more than 10,000 donors, Catholic Charities is the largest private human service in Maryland. With programs like Our Daily Bread Employment Center, the Esperanza Center, Sarah's House, in District 32, and his house in St. Vincent's Villa, and 24 senior apartment buildings. Catholic Charities is supporting our constituents and our state. And I have to say, Sarah's house is a very special place. I've spent some time there, and if you have a chance to visit, they do great work for our homeless families. Catholic Charities continues to grow and innovate, and I'm excited to announce that Catholic Charities is undertaking a new $30 million project in West Baltimore. They are acquiring a former elementary school, completely rehabbing it so it can be repurposed into an intergenerational center. The IG Center will offer early Head Start, a rec center, workforce development, health services, community gathering spaces, and programming for seniors. The land outside the center will offer recreational spaces for the entire community with grassy areas, basketball courts, and a community playground. Please join me in welcoming Catholic Charities Executive Director Bill McCarthy, Board President Teresa Beck, and Safe Streets Director Greg Marshburn on the floor, and representatives of their numerous programs in the gallery, if you'll stand and wave. And Mr. President, can we have the resolution read, please?
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Catholic Charities of Baltimore in recognition of your 100th anniversary of providing care and service to Marylanders with compassion, love, and excellence. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on the 17th day of March, 2023.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the representatives and advocates and action workers, and to the Safe Streets team especially, I see my great Cherry Hill Safe Streets team up there, and to those who are joining us on the floor, all of the members of the Catholic Charities of Baltimore, congratulations on 100 years of remarkable service. We're so thankful for everything that you all do. Thank you. Congratulations. All right, good way to start the morning. Introductions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you would give us join me and the senator from District 29 for a warm welcome to a homeschooling organization that's in our district, Seven Gables Academy. I think they may be behind me. If they could stand up to be recognized. Some great young leaders of tomorrow. Thank you all for being here.
Welcome, Seven Gables. Welcome. Enjoy yourselves. Great to see you. Additional introductions? Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District.
The senator from District 37 and I joined together to welcome constituents from Salisbury and Delmar. And Pastor Travers, you picked a good day to be here since some of your neighbors are here. And I want to introduce Wendy Ansbacher. She's a longtime friend and supporter. Also, Kelly Kennan is a local family dentist, and her daughters, Charlotte and Jillian, who are 7th graders at Delmar Middle School, and they're here to see us in action. Please welcome them.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Bridge traffic was heavy today. All the folks coming to Annapolis, moving westward. All right. Any additional introductions before we jump in today? Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have some amazing constituents here today. First, we have Councilmember Dawn Lukey, I believe, is in the gallery of the Senate, as well as Liam Lukey, who is here, and just so happy that they're here and seeing the Senate in action. Please welcome them.
Welcome. Great to see you both. Thank you for joining us. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is a first for me. I'm still working through the trauma of serving in the previous chamber where it was discouraged, but this is my first time ever introducing a member of my staff or intern. And so today in the gallery behind our president is Adam Curl, who was raised in Catonsville, but a student at University of Maryland College Park. He is a double major in government and politics with a concentration in international relations and criminology and criminal justice. Please welcome Adam to the chamber.
Welcome, Adam. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your work. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. You all remember Alex Harlan from yesterday. Well, today's back with his friend from graduate school, Michaela Canavi, who's visiting from Syracuse, New York, where her uncle is a New York State Senator. Please welcome her.
Oh, very neat. Excellent. Welcome. We're growing our audience, It's 100% growth today. That's great. All right, any other introductions before we jump in? Oh, yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would now be an appropriate time to thank the Pages for their service for the week?
Let's do that now. That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. So, colleagues, well, first of all, happy St. Patrick's Day. There's a little gift on your desk from the Protocol Committee. And then I also want to take this opportunity. Thank you. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our Pages. This is their second week with us, their second and final week. So if we could have the Pages, we have citations for them as well. So first we have Benjamin Darasavi from St. Mary's County, District 29, a student at Leonardtown High School. And then...
well, let's make sure we get the picture with the minority and majority leader. Great. Wonderful. Perfect. No, that's what I meant. Joint picture. Absolutely.
All right, and then next we have Catherine Harris from Howard County, District.
Senator, give us just one moment. Let's finish our. Oh, we're going to do one group. One group. I see. Now I got it. Senator, please proceed.
Apologies, Mr. President. Yes, they wanted to do a group picture with the Pages and the majority leader, minority leader.
Wonderful.
So next we have Catherine Harris from Howard County, District 12, a student at Long Reach High School. Kendall Eichner Duncan from Prince George's County, District 26, a student at Friendly High School. Gavin McIntyre, Somerset County, District 38, a student at Washington Academy High School. And finally, we have Marcus Schmidt, Garrett County, District 1, a student at Northern Garrett High School. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excellent. All right. Wonderful. We thank the Pages. Thank you all so much for your work. But don't take off today. We still got a lot of work to do, so, don't take it too easy. Hopefully not too much work today. We'll see. All right. Thank you, Madam Protocol Chair. Any further announcements or introductions before we jump in? If not, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. Let's go ahead. We have a message from the executive. Clerk, read the message.
Dear President Ferguson, in accordance with Article 2, Section 13 of the Constitution of Maryland, I am pleased to submit the following appointment nominations for confirmation by the Maryland State Senate. These individuals bring exceptional knowledge and ability to the offices for which they have been nominated. I am confident they will provide the strength of experience and leadership to instill confidence among our citizens and ensure we succeed in our goals for Marylanders. I look forward to your favorable approval of the nominees. Thank you for your assistance and support. Sincerely, Westmore, Governor.
All right. Message having been read is ordered journalized. These are additional nominees on these Fridays. We have additional ones coming in, and so we'll refer them to the Executive Nominations Committee. All right. Let's go ahead and start with the report on the Committee on Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 25. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 327, Senator Alfred, Hunting, Wildlife Conservation, Outdoor Recreation, Funding, Promotion, Management, Licenses, Permits, and Stamps, favorable with 3 amendments.
All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from the President Pro Tem as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 327 establishes the Wildlife Conservation, Education, and Outreach Program within the Department of Natural Resources to increase outdoor recreation and stewardship, hunting, and wildlife conservation. The bill also increases fees for several hunting licenses, stamps, and permits, establishes a resident and non-resident SICA deer stamp and related fees, authorizes qualified non-resident college or university students to purchase a resident hunting license, and codifies fur bearer permit fees. The bill also alters Maryland's recreational use statute, requires DNR to work with the Maryland Department of Agriculture to develop a plan to address deer overpopulation in the state, and establishes a new reporting requirement for the Department of Natural Resources. There are 3 committee amendments. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 strikes language that would have repealed the statewide prohibition on hunting migratory game birds on Sundays. Amendment 3 alters requirements for the deer overpopulation plan and requires the Department of Natural Resources to use a portion of any federal funding increase that results from the bill for the creation of a farmer cost-sharing program to provide funding for the planting of buffer crops on agriculture land. I move adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Chair recognizes the Senator from Montgomery County on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader would be good enough to yield for a couple of questions, please.
Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Thank you for that. So I've got a couple of questions. I'm not sure what's fact or fiction here, and I'm hoping we can maybe get a better handle on an issue with regard to waterfowl and limitations with hunting waterfowl, and that in an effort to get around some of the prohibitions regarding migratory waterfowl, that it is my understanding that there are some facilities that are actually raising ducks domestically on site, and then they are being, as I have been told, and maybe the committee is familiar with this issue, being launched into the air with cannons to then be shot down by, I guess, those who are wealthy enough to have the opportunity to hunt, quote unquote, hunt these ducks that are launched from cannons. Can you, are you familiar with this subject? Did the committee hear any discussion about this? And could you help me to better understand what's happening?
Yes, Senator, we did. We did hear that. That is the current law. It is acceptable under current law within the framework that is there. This bill, as amended, did not take up that issue.
So what I heard is, in fact, correct. That
yes.
Okay. Wow. Is there any reason, or could you share with the chamber the logic of the committee, perhaps, in not addressing what seems, at least at its face value, to be sort of an excessively cruel, perhaps excessively unnecessary process that certainly raises concerns in my mind in the 21st century as to how we conduct ourselves as human beings. I'm just curious what the committee's thought on that.
I will tell you exactly what the committee's thoughts were on that, Senator. The committee's thoughts on that were this. The essence of this bill is to actually raise fees that have not been raised in literally 40 years. Okay? That's really the heart of the bill. With that, what we will be able to do is bring up to $6.8 million, including federal funds, to support conservation, to support community outreach, that we all know is extremely important in the state, because that is actually how that is funded, and that's the heart of the bill. We didn't want to, basically derail the bill, okay, because it was becoming a little convoluted and a little bit controversial. And so in addition to that,
this issue, I'm not looking to interrupt. You're saying this particular subject became controversial?
The subject actually of Sunday hunting, right?
As a broad theme.
Exactly right. That became a broad area of concern. As originally contemplated, Senator, there was actually an expansion of Sunday hunting that was in this bill. We as a body thought that that was not the appropriate thing to do with regard to this bill, because we felt like we would just stay silent on Sunday hunting, okay? So we pulled that out of the bill, and we still remain silent on Sunday hunting while increasing these fees to make sure that we're able to really support conservation in the state of Maryland.
No, and the underlying principle of the bill, I am all in, I fully support it. It's just that I began hearing, and I just didn't know whether, it sounded so bizarre that I was trying to get a handle on whether there's any fact. Evidently there is. Does the committee have any handle on the numbers of locations and where these locations are that are raising domestic ducks to be launched from cannons just to be shot down. I guess as they're launched out, are there numbers?
No.
No.
I don't. I did because, again, we were staying focused on this bill. And we also are, I think it's, on all seriousness, I think that it really does make sense for there to be a separate piece of legislation that deals with that issue. I completely support that. But this issue is about raising fees that have been set from 40 years ago in order to raise money, in order to provide for hunting and conservation in the state of Maryland.
Okay. No, I thank you, the floor leader, very much for the conversation, and looking forward to see if perhaps going forward there will be something done to address this cruel practice. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, additional discussion on the on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 327 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to judicial proceedings. We've got report number 19. Oh, we didn't? Oh, I'm sorry. Whoops. Look at that. It's been a little busy. Or was I trying to hide one of the bills? No, just kidding. Clerk will read the next bill.
I can do that. Senate Bill 422, Senator Bailey, Natural Resources, Black Bass Conservation Fund, Establishment favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th District as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President and colleagues. Senate Bill 422 establishes a Black Bass Conservation Fund in the Department of Natural Resources consisting of voluntary monetary donations made by individuals at the time of purchasing a recreational fishing license. The fund is to be used for black bass stocking, habitat enhancements, tournaments, and conservation research. There are no committee amendments, so Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 422 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 611, Senator Bailey, Office of the Attorney General, Environment, Natural Resources, Monitoring Unit Establishment, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This bill is going to help our Attorney General work with our state's attorneys on enforcement of our environmental and natural resources laws. Currently, they don't have that authority, and this will give them concurrent jurisdiction. There were two amendments. The first was technical, and the second just renames the unit and clarifies the staffing and other needs. Move the favorable report as amended.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 611 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 813, Senator A. Washington, Comprehensive Flood Management Grant Program, Environmental Justice Funding, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City and County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 813 addresses the issue that climate change has really increased, as well as flooding associated with climate change has increased massively. It expresses the intent of the legislature to invest an additional $10 million in flood mitigation, an additional $10 million in this flood management grant. Additionally, the legislature's intent that 40% of the grants be allocated to communities that are to projects in communities that are underserved and or overburdened. There are two committee amendments. One is technical. The second amendment strikes references to census tracts within the existing grant program and a particular EJ score, and instead uses the Maryland Maryland codes of overburdened communities as a way of defining it as it's defined under current law. And the way that overburdened communities are defined under current law have to do with at least 25% of the residents qualify as low income, at least 50% of the residents identify as non-white, or at least 15% of the residents have limited English proficiency. I move for the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if I could ask the floor leader a question.
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for walking through, and thank you for explaining overburden, because that was going to be a question, so I
Yes.
appreciate you pointing that out.
I knew it would be.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was curious. I think that's a better definition than what was before. A question would be, what's the current way that we allocate flood these funds?
So under the current, well, let's see, I don't think there's a...
Comprehensive flood, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just based off of projects. So there are applications from local jurisdictions to support flood mitigation projects. And what was there was an analysis conducted by the Department of Environment, and they found that the vast majority of these funds were not in the overburdened communities. So they're adding an additional 10 million. So anyone that is currently funded won't be impacted. There's an additional 10 million, and then we set these additional qualifications.
So the qualifications are for the additional funding.
Well, it's for the package as a whole, but the funding will, yeah, so, but based on the formula, the same amount of money, the amount of money going to projects that are not in that category would remain the same.
Okay, and then to follow up on the, because you did give the definition of overburdened communities, but if I can just ask, did I hear anywhere in there about where they are in relation to the actual flooding that happens, or like low-lying areas? I'm just trying to understand that definition better.
Yes, so there are currently federal criteria and state criteria for flood funding that identifies what the criteria are. I can get that to you,
I understand.
But that there are already ways to prioritize.
So we follow
projects.
that as well.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. President, I apologize. Just to follow, do we follow that as well?
Yes.
But
Yes, we
this
do.
is using. We will follow those standards.
It's
with
providing
this.
an additional lens for the reviewer of the grant applications to use when they are judging their priorities for being funded.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, the question is on the two amendments, the two committee amendments. Any discussion? Any objection to the two committee amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 813 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, now we can move over to 19 from judicial proceedings. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 36, Enter West, Family Law, Grounds for Divorce, favorable.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill repeals the authority of a court to grant a limited divorce and alters the ground for a court to grant an absolute divorce. The bill repeals the authority of a court to grant an absolute divorce based on messy, awkward, and frankly embarrassing testimony about issues such as adultery, desertion, insanity, and cruelty, and authorizes a court to grant an absolute divorce on the following four grounds. Number one, and most importantly, if the parties have lived separate and apart for 6 months without interruption before the filing of the application for divorce. 2, irreconcilable differences. 3, permanent legal incapacity of one of the parties. And finally, mutual consent. In addition, the bill specifies that the parties can continue to live under the same roof during the 6-month separation period, so long as they don't live in the same bedroom. This bill passed the committee with a 10-to-1 vote. There are no committee amendments. I hereby move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, Chair recognizes the senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, you'll see that in committee I was the only dissenting vote, and I just thought that it would be proper to share an Irish marriage blessing. May the years be many without ever a fight. Remember 3 simple words: sweetheart, you were right.
That's pretty funny. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Mr. President, that's a tough act to follow.
Yes, it is.
But I did wonder if I could ask one question of my friend, the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield? Appears so. Senator may
Absolutely.
proceed.
And I just saw this coming, so I apologize. I would have probably talked to you offline, but I do want to ask the question. So the change here, because I remember personally voting for some of these changes, even though I think people enter into marriage and get divorced too lightly, in my view. However, I acknowledge that previously we've passed some things to, I guess you'd say, liberalize our marriage laws because we don't want people in bad situations that have decided to agree to a divorce to have it linger for a long, long time. However, in this bill, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going from 12 months to 6 months?
Right. That's right. We don't want to, not only do we not want it to linger, we don't want the ills of the parents to be visited on the children for extended periods of time.
Well, Mr. President, I agree with that. I've got to decide what to do here. The other changes you mentioned they're not current laws. So the change about you can still cohabitate, but you can't basically can't be in the same room. How do we? I guess that's
One spouse would have to move to the living room or the basement or some other room in the house. Frequently, it's hard for 2 people who are not well off financially to literally establish 2 separate abodes until such time as the property in the marriage is divided. Once the property is divided, it's easier for the second spouse to move out.
And that doesn't happen until the divorce is final.
Exactly. Right. This is going to make it possible for people who otherwise couldn't get a divorce because they can't move out to get a divorce.
Okay, Mr. President, I wonder if I could special order this until the next session, or are we going to have a second session today?
We'll have a second one today.
I don't want to cause a problem for the bill, but I do have one thing I'd like to discuss with my friend, if that's okay.
Sure. That'd be fine.
No objections? Any objections?
No objection.
Without objections, so ordered. We'll take it up in the second session today. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 254. Senate Bill 254, Senator Hester, Business Regulation, Charitable Contribution Definition, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you solicit charitable contributions here in the state of Maryland, you have to register with the Secretary of State's office. What this bill does is it modifies the definition of what a charitable contribution excludes, which is an authorization for or a discount on the use of services or materials, equipment, or facilities. What this bill also does, as I mentioned before, when you register, there are about 10 different items that one has to do to register with the Secretary of State. You have some small organizations that can't afford audits, so what this bill does is it actually creates a litmus test that the Secretary of State can use in lieu of such audit. There were 2 committee amendments. The first was technical, and the second strikes the definitional change that I spoke about from the bill, and that's the authorization for the Secretary of State to accept documents in lieu of that audit review. Mr. President, I move the amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the committee amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 254 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 540, the President, Human Relations, Civil Rights Enforcement, Powers of the Attorney General, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 540 gives the Attorney General the power to investigate, prosecute, and remediate civil rights violations. It also requires coordination with the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, and it establishes the Civil Rights Enforcement Fund. There's one committee amendment, Mr. President, and that amendment adds the provision that the Attorney General may not bring a civil rights action under this bill against the state or local government or an employee or an agent of a political subdivision or a unit of a state or local government. It also prohibits the use of information obtained under the subpoena from being used against the person providing that information in a criminal proceeding. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report and the one committee amendment.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 540 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 592, Senator Smith, surplus military equipment reporting, extension, favorable.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's the military surplus program by which the local jurisdictions and states can acquire military equipment and vehicles after they've come under disuse from the military at a discounted rate. This bill simply requires a reporting, the continuation of the reporting of the acquisition of those vehicles and material. There was a sunset provision, so it just continues the reporting.
Excellent. All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 592 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 645, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Sheriff's Office salaries and collective bargaining, favorable.
Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill establishes or alters training liability assurance. Oops, wrong bill. Sorry.
No worries. It's a long week for everyone.
This bill authorizes the mayor and city council of Baltimore City instead of the Secretary of Budget and Management to set salaries for deputy sheriffs and other specified employees of the Baltimore City Sheriff's Office. The bill also alters statutory provisions related to collective bargaining for specified officers in Baltimore City. There are no committee amendments. I would move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 645 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 760, Senator Carter, Security Guard Agency, Security Guard Employees, and Security Guard Standards and Certifications, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill alters the training liability insurance notification and recertification requirements for certified security guards. The Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission must identify or establish training programs for certified security guards. The security guard agencies and employers must report the use of force incidents by security guard to the Secretary of the State Police. There is one committee amendment. It adds the definition of use of force. It lowers training hours requirement for security guards to be recertified, and it extends the time in which use of force incidents must be reported. I would move the adoption of the favorable committee report and the one committee amendment.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the amendment? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 760 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 859, Senator Smith, Reproductive Health Protection Act, favorable with 6 amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 859, as amended, this bill establishes additional protections for information related to legally protected health care when that information is sought by another state. It also prohibits a health occupations board from taking specified disciplinary actions related to the provision of legally protected health care. It also prohibits a medical professional liability insurer from taking adverse actions against the practitioner related to the practice of legally protected health care. And finally, it prohibits the specified state entities, agents, employees from participating in interstate investigations seeking to impose specified liabilities, sanctions against a person related to providing legally protected health care. Mr. President, there are 6 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 creates the exception to the prohibition in the bill against a court granting an order for electronic surveillance to investigate the acts related to the legally protected health care where the acts forming the basis for that investigation actually constituted a crime here in Maryland. Amendment number 3 clarifies the language in the bill relating to the prohibition on health occupations boards taking disciplinary actions related to legally protected health care. Amendment number 4 clarifies that the prohibition of insurers taking adverse actions against practitioners also applies to a practitioner making a referral for that legally protected health care. Amendment number 5 declares that a medical professional liability insurers required annual submission rates to the Maryland Insurance Commission administration rather, and amendment number 6 is technical. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report and the 6 committee amendments.
Floor leader moves the adoption of the 6 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the 6 committee amendments? Without objection, the 6 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 859 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to the Committee on Budget and Taxation. This is calendar report number 16. Also, as we're pulling that up, just thinking schedule today, we're going to go for about another hour and see where we can get with another hour. If we can get through stuff, that would be very, very helpful. And then we'll look at probably a 4 o'clock afternoon start. And then if we can get through all of it this afternoon, we'll take Saturday off. But we're keeping Saturday on the schedule, depending on where we are, based on the afternoon schedule. So that's the schedule for the day. Let's see where we go. Report number 16. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 476, Senator Zucker, recordation tax, indemnity mortgage exemption threshold amount, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 476 deals with the indemnity mortgages. What that is that when you have a buyer and a seller go into an agreement, often you would have a third party come in and use their property as collateral. And prior to around 2012, the state of Maryland imposed a tax on that type of agreement, that it would be taxed on anything $1 million and over, and then just a year later, they increased it by another $2 million. And it's been, Mr. President, over 10 years since we've taken a look at this. The economy has changed, and really, the Budget and Taxation Committee colleagues saw this as an opportunity to create economic investment, especially around affordable housing. So, working it out with the Maryland Association of County Organizations, we adopted what they thought, what they had suggested to bring it to $12.5 million. That was what they suggested, and the Budget and Taxation Committee agreed. As its current stands, there's no opposition. There was one committee amendment that sets the threshold to the $12.5 million and also extends it out, the effective date and the applicability date, by a year, just so everyone could adjust. So with that, I would move the committee amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 476 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 537, Senator King, Gaming Video Lottery Operation License Renewal, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 537 requires a licensee to file with the State Lottery and Gaming Control Commission, SLGCC, a notice of intent to apply for license renewal 2 years before the expiration of the initial 15-year term of a video lottery operation license. SLGCC must, by regulation, establish an application process to renew a video lottery operation license and set the license renewal fee. Upon application for renewal, SLGCC must renew the license unless it finds that the licensee is no longer qualified for the license. Before denying an application, SLGCC must provide the licensee an opportunity for a hearing. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 makes changes to the function paragraph. Amendment number 2 requires the commission to pay the renewal fees to the Education Trust Fund. I move adoption of the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the 2 amendments? Without objection, the 2 amendments, committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 537 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 624, Senator Zucker, income tax, automated external defibrillator tax credit, favorable. 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsors. The floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 624 deals with automated external defibrillator tax credit. As we've seen with the National Football League when Damar Hamlin went down in a cardiac arrest, and also we have a short title change, changing the short title Joseph Shea. This was one of our colleagues with the Montgomery County delegation who lost her husband to a cardiac arrest at a restaurant. So what this does, Mr. President and colleagues, is this will create a tax credit for a one-time tax credit for restaurants that want to purchase an AED device. That way we're incentivizing that they do it, trying to save lives and keep people healthy. But this is it is voluntary, and in the current posture, it has no opposition. There are 2 changes. One was the title change that I mentioned, and then it adds the entire committee as sponsors. And then the Second Amendment clarifies that the tax credit may only be claimed once. So with that, I'd move the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment on the amendments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader yield,
Will the
please?
floor leader yield? Up here, so Senator, may I proceed?
Just a quick question, and I love the bill. It says, as you mentioned, and I was reading in the bill, that you can only get the tax credit once. I assume there's a lifespan for AEDs, for automatic external defibrillators. What happens when it peters out and no longer works? Then they just don't get the credit?
I mean, it's interesting because that was part of the discussion when the Restaurant Association came in, and one of our colleagues from District 7 brought it up too. So yeah, they've changed these AED devices, which stands for automated external defibrillators. So I'll say AED. They've changed. So the lifespan is 20 to 30 years or more, and the battery life has advanced dramatically. So yeah, there's not going to be. This should last for a while. We just really, Mr. President and colleagues, we just want people to utilize and go get an AED device because it's going to save lives.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from the 32nd District on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield?
Will the floor leader yield? Pure so, Senator, may I proceed?
Of course.
I want to first tell you a story. I really am a supporter of this. We had a county councilman that died right before our eyes from a heart attack, and his girlfriend at the time really got a whole organization started to provide AEDs to certain facilities. So this is really important to me. He was a good friend. But where you say it's only available one time, suppose there's multiple locations. I mean, a lot of restaurants have multiple locations. Is it still only one time, or is it per location?
Mr. President, I certainly appreciate that question. We want to encourage in the state of Maryland people to grow their business. So if someone owns a business and has multiple locations, I think we limit to about 3. So you can get the tax credit. If you have various restaurants, you can get the AED would follow that. So you get a tax credit for each AED.
My second question, Mr. President, if I can, is technical. In our committee, we had the bill requiring the AEDs, and we used the term food service, which was more inclusive, and I don't know if your committee discussed that or not. But
yeah, I think that there's another committee of jurisdiction that is considering that. This was not how this bill came in. This bill only includes restaurants, but I think colleagues would all agree. We just want to get the ball started. We want to make sure that we started for at least the process. But if there's another bill in that posture, certainly look forward to supporting it if it comes here.
All right, questions on the 2 committee amendments? Any further discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 624 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 640, Senator Jackson, Sales and Use Tax, Electricity for Agricultural Purposes, Exemption, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. This bill here is just a general reminder of, in the state of Maryland, agriculture is still our #1 industry. But this bill also brings into conformity with the larger agricultural businesses, our local farmers. Senate Bill 640 exempts the purchase of electricity by a farmer from the state sales and use tax when used to 1, raise livestock or poultry, 2, prepare, irrigate, or tend the soil, or 3, plant, service, harvest, store, clean, dry, or transport seeds or crops. The bill takes effect July 1, 2023. There were 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors to the bill. Amendment number 2 provides a 2-year sunset for the bill. Move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the 2 amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 640 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 641, Senator Jackson, Law Enforcement Officers Pension System, City of Bowie Police Department Transfers and Purchases of Service, favorable 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 641, as amended, allows a member of the Law Enforcement Officers Pension System employed by the City of Bowie who meets specified criteria to request a transfer of service credit earned during employment with a prior employer to the Law Enforcement Officers Pension System and purchase service credit in the Law Enforcement Officers Pension System for which the member is not otherwise entitled. The bill takes effect July 1, 2023 and terminates on December 31st, 2023. This, in effect, Mr. President and colleagues, is another corrective piece of legislation that your pension committee has found itself having to modify. There is 1 amendment. It makes a technical clarification to the dates of hire referenced in the bill. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 641 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 643, Senator McCrae, Housing Community Development Program Act funding, favorable 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 643, as amended, requires the comptroller to distribute $5 million in fiscal year 2024 through 2027 from the state's unclaimed property fund to the Community Development Program Fund. The bill also repeals uncodified language from prior chapter law specifying that DHCD is not required to incur costs from the Community Development Program until money is appropriated in the state budget. Amendment number 1 makes technical amendments, Mr. President, and amendment number 2 also requires a distribution for the fiscal 2024 through 2027. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 643 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 659, the President 21st Century Financial Systems Council establishment, favorable 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 659 is a really important bill. It brings together 5 state agencies, the Comptroller's Office, the Treasurer's Office, DBM, DO-IT, and DGS to study, set policies, objectives, and coordinate the development of a modern financial system for the state. There are 3 amendments. The first is technical, the second adds a preamble to the bill, and the third amends the bill as I described, as well as requires these agencies to consult with a representative from the Modernized Maryland Oversight Commission. I move the adoption of the amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 659 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 691, Senator King, Home Amenities, Rentals, Sales, and Use Tax imposed and local tax authorized, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 691 imposes the state sales and use tax on specified home amenity rentals and authorizes counties and municipalities to impose a home amenity rental tax. There are no committee amendments, and I move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 691 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 692, Senator King, income tax credit for purchase of zero-emission and hybrid mobile machinery. Favorable to amendments.
690. Oh, Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County as the floor. Oh, the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 692 authorizes a non-refundable credit against the state income tax for the purchase of hybrid and zero-emission mobile machinery for use in an eligible taxpayer's business or for rental or lease to the general public. The amount of the credit is equal to 15% of the purchase price of the qualified mobile machinery, 30% for zero-emission mobile machineries, and subject to a maximum of $5,000, $10,000 in case of mobile machinery with a gross vehicle weight rating of less than 14,000 pounds. An eligible taxpayer may apply any excess credit to succeeding taxable years until fully used. And the credit is available for tax years 2024 through 28. There are two committee amendments. One adds sponsors to the bill and makes clarifying changes. Amendment number 2 alters the time for which the tax credit is applicable and requires a specified report on the tax credit. I move adoption of 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 692 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 694, Senator Jennings, Department of Natural Resources, Real Property, Exchange with Private Real Property. Favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, state of Maryland owns a lot of property. Department of Natural Resources probably, I believe, owns the most. And sometimes it's advantageous for them to exchange with a private landowner or vice versa. What this bill does, it helps streamline that process. It does, in a nutshell, number one, the property must be less than 5 acres. If it is the private landowner that initiates this exchange, the private landowner is the one who's responsible for all cost. And third, DNR must refer to the proposed exchange to the Board of Public Works for final disposition. It's a pretty simple bill, deals with a lot of issues out there that DNR has been working with. So with that, there are no amendments and there are no co-sponsors. So I move favorable on the committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District.
Would the floor leader yield for one question?
Senator may proceed.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the 5-acre maximum. How was that number set? I just listening for the first time to this bill, it just seems like a low number.
It's just because I think if you get above that, there's a lot more that DNR needs to deal with process-wise. This is generally for like a maybe like a driveway access where you need to kind of cut a 1/4 acre so a driveway can come around, or sometimes property owners, years ago somebody might have built a structure that might be sitting on some DNR property, and when they do a deed check, they realize it's sitting 100 feet on DNR and they can exchange it. This bill did pass last year, very similar to this. DNR did come in this year and testify in support of this legislation, and it was just determined that 5 acres was small enough that it keeps it under the cap. Again, there are no co-sponsors.
All right. All right, on the report. Senators move the report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 694 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 834, Senator Jackson, State Retirement and Pension System Administrative Fees. Favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 834, as amended, is a joint committee on pensions bill that alters the process and timing for calculating administrative fees paid by the participating employers to the Board of Trustees and the State Retirement and Pension System to cover the annual operating expenses for the board and the State Retirement Agency. There are two amendments. The first is technical. The second strikes redundant provisions from the bill. Move adoption of the committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 834 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 855, Senator McCray, property tax in rem foreclosure, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor. The floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 855, as amended, allows for specified in-rem foreclosure actions in Baltimore City if a property is vacant or a nuisance property as determined under the Baltimore City Building Code. The bill also establishes provisions governing the sale of the property, determine the property's value, distributing surplus proceeds from the sale of the property after an in-rem foreclosure, and reopening of in-rem foreclosure judgments. Amendment number 1 makes technical changes to the title. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill as introduced and establishes an in-rem foreclosure process for Baltimore City modeled off of existing law and modified to allow vacant or nuisance properties be subjected to in-rem foreclosure. Move for adoption of the committee report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 855 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 922, Senator Rosa Pepp, Maryland Construction, Education, and Innovation Fund funding alteration, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The construction industry is one with a lot of good jobs, good training programs, but not enough people going into it. And so a little over 10 years ago, the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation was set up at Towson. In 2015, we required the governor to put $250,000 in the budget to support that effort. This bill increases it from $250,000 to $625,000 for the next 5 years. There are two amendments. One is technical and adds co-sponsors, and the second one terminates the funding after 5 years. Move the amendments and the bill and the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the two committee amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendments, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 922 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Yeah. Did you see? Okay. Let's see. We have Education, Energy, and the Environment, number 26. I missed this one earlier. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 286, Senator Simon Nair, Department of Veterans Affairs, Burial in the State Veteran Cemeteries, Spouses, favorable 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill works to continue to make Maryland friendly for military and the veterans. Specifically, this bill requires the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs to bury an eligible spouse or dependent in a space above or below the veteran in the same plot as the veteran, unless the cemetery management determines burial in the same plot is impossible. An eligible spouse or dependent must be buried without charge. The department must provide a grave liner also without charge. There were 3 amendments. This one actually did add co-sponsors. The second amendment made technical changes, and the third conformed the definitions for eligible spouse and definitions to the federal regulations, and then clarified that the grave liner would not be charged as well. I move the amendment in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 286 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Before we go to the next bill, recognize the minority leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I could recognize somebody that just joined us on the Senate floor today, certainly a friend to everyone in here, former delegate, former Secretary of Labor, former Secretary of Commerce, and the current CEO of the Maryland Tech Council, Kelly Schultz.
Welcome.
And she's here with her niece, Evie, and her friend, Penny, as well, too. So please welcome Kelly. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Welcome, welcome. Enjoy. It's great to see you again. Welcome. All right. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 429, Senator Quarterman, Business Regulation Home Improvement Commission Award Limits, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill increases from $100,000 to $200,000 the maximum possible amount that may be awarded by the Maryland Home Improvement Commission from the Home Improvement Guarantee Fund to all claimants for acts or omissions of one contractor unless, after MHIC has paid out the $200,000, the contractor reimburses the $200,000 to the fund. Bill takes place July 1st, 2023. There are two committee amendments. The first is technical. The second increases the cap on total payouts across all claims from the fund from $200,000 under the bill to $250,000. Increases from $250,000 to $1 million the dollar value at which the fund must remain to avoid submitting a report to the General Assembly detailing actions being taken to restore the fund balance. Similarly, the amendment also requires a fee to be assessed if the balance falls below the requisite amount and makes a technical change. I move adoption of the two amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 429 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 639, Senator Bailey, Historic St. Mary's City Commission Reform Act of 2023, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the Lower Eastern Shores, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a bill that will support the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. It is the St. Mary's City Commission Reform Act of 2023. This bill makes numerous changes to the governance of the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. One, it alters the commission's membership. Two, it requires the commission to develop and publish written policies regarding the commission's operating procedures. Three, it's authorizing and establishing rules for the commission to collaborate with the Historic St. Mary's City Foundation. By December 31st of 2023, the commission must report to the General Assembly on the commission's progress in addressing the concerns raised by its most recent independent audit. The bill takes effect June 1st, 2023. There are two committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds a representative from the Native American community to the commission. It requires services between St. Mary's College and the commission to be provided in accordance with the rules and procedures of St. Mary's College. It clarifies that the 3-year terms on written agreements may be renewed indefinitely, but the length of each contract may not be longer than 3 years. It applies policies and public ethics guidelines to affiliated nonprofit organizations broadly instead of just to the Historic St. Mary's Foundation solely. And it does clarify that the bill does not impair any presently existing contracts. There is no fiscal impact. There is no opposition. The bill passed unanimously. This is a good bill in support of Historic St. Mary's City Commission. So I would move the amendments favorably and move for a favorable report on SB 639.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 639 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 910, Senator Simon Ayer, Maryland Veterans Service Animal Program Definitions, Therapy Horse, favorable.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have learned throughout the years that our veterans are dealing with suicide. It's not just nationwide, it's also here in Maryland. and we as a body have worked to help them. And one of the great programs is the Maryland Veteran Service Animal Program that was started several years ago that partners with nonprofits in many of your districts with highly trained dogs. And they train them and they work with the veteran and they give the dog to the veteran free of charge. Most of them dealing with PTSD. We came back a year or two later and found out there were these therapy horse facilities that do very similar things. So we added them, but we didn't have the money that we needed in the fund, and we didn't want to overburden it. And we promised we'd come back later and expand it. Well, we have the money now, and so all this bill does is expand it to allow more facilities to help these veterans. That's the bill. I'd move the committee report. Thank you.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 910 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to finance. We have report number 19. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 2, Senator Hester, Department of Human Services, Electronic Benefits, Transfer Cards, Fraud, Prevention, Electronic Benefits Theft Act of 2023, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this emergency bill is desperately needed, and the history behind it is that there was an alarming increase in thefts of supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits this past spring and summer. That occurrence was not lost on the Senate President, who was alarmed by what was happening and asked that the Senate Finance Committee hold public hearings in the fall to try to get a handle on what was happening with these stolen SNAP benefits. The sponsor of the bill was in attendance at that public hearing. As a consequence of what we learned and the harm and damage it was doing to so many of our residents, colleagues, we have approximately 870,000 of our residents enrolled in the SNAP program. Approximately 90,000 of them are age 60 and over. And what we were learning was that there were families that were not able to access the desperately needed food assistance that we should be providing to them and that they are entitled to under these benefits. So the bill sponsor, working with our new and exciting Secretary of Human Services, who is just a hard-working, exciting human being. She met with the secretary, she worked with our House colleagues, she worked with the advocates, and the bill before you is the consequence of that work. So let me explain to you what the bill does. Senate Bill 2, as amended, is an emergency bill that requires the Department of Human Services to develop a process and to reimburse a beneficiary for any amount of benefits lost due to the fraudulent use of the beneficiary's electronic benefits transfer card. The bill also specifies requirements relating to the procurement process for electronic benefits distribution, and the amendments to the bill, as I mentioned, were developed with the Secretary. Amendment 1 alters title and is technical. Amendment 2 adds definitions, specifies a process for restoring stolen benefits to a beneficiary, requires a new EBT in the event of stolen benefits. In the event of stolen benefits, provides an appeal process if restoration is denied, establishes reporting requirements, and ultimately will require the department to work with the vendors to develop better cards that are not as susceptible to theft. Colleagues, there will be federal dollars coming to help cover this. This is a national issue, not just a Maryland state issue. We've got federal dollars coming, and the governor has seen fit to put into the budget already money to help cover and protect those individuals whose resources are stolen. So with that, Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 2 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 299, Senator Kramer, Food Service Facilities Automated External Defibrillator Program, Joy Shea Act, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, you just heard a little while ago the companion bill to the one that is before you. Sudden cardiac arrest is a serious issue that is, if not treated within minutes, will likely end in the death of the individual who is experiencing the event. With each passing minute that an individual is not defibrillated, the chances of their survival go down 10%. By the time you get into the 5-minute range, the chances of their surviving and surviving without brain damage becomes very likely that they will not, and the consequences are so serious that the committee put the bill that's before you, passed out the bill that's before you, and it is a tailored bill. It has been amended. As introduced, it was of a much broader scale. The bill before you now would simply provide that a restaurant with gross revenues of greater than $1 million or a grocery store with square footage of greater than 10,000 square feet will in fact provide an AED that is accessible to employees and the public. These devices with technology now are absolutely fascinating. They will direct an individual who is completely untrained as to how to use the device, and then if the device is either not properly placed on the patient, it will not allow the device to work. These devices also then provide instruction subsequent to the use of the AED in how to provide CPR pending the arrival of first responders. So, colleagues, Amendment 1 alters the title and is technical. Amendment 2 exempts restaurants and grocery stores from obtaining an EMS board certified and related requirements, adds definitions, specifies the type of grocery store subject to the bill's requirements, increases a gross income exemption to $1 million, and adds civil immunity protections. Again, the logic behind the bill is these are facilities where there are large volumes of people passing through on an annual basis, and one of these units could easily save a human life. With that, Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 299 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 506, Senator Muse, Town of Forest Heights, Prince George's County, Urban Renewal Authority for Blight Clearance, PG 410-23, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Howard and Anne Arundel counties as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 506 authorizes the town of Forest Heights in Prince George's County to undertake urban renewal projects for blight clearance by exercising the power of eminent domain to acquire properties in blighted areas. that are zoned for commercial purposes. The town may not initiate an urban renewal project unless its legislative body adopts a resolution that defines the area and finds that rehabilitation or redevelopment is necessary and in the public's interest. The authority for eminent domain rests with the Constitution, but is able to be authorized for certain jurisdictions and municipalities. This bill authorizes that for the town of Forest Heights, similar to 67 other municipalities in the state that have this. There are no committee amendments. There is no opposition in the committee. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 506 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 542, the President, Public Safety, Emergency Management, Consumer Protections Against Price Gouging, favorable, 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Charles County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, during times of natural disasters, public health emergencies, certain goods or services, the prices just skyrocket. If you think about a hurricane and where powers are cut off in a lot of homes and businesses, people go out buy generators and the price of generators just skyrocket. Or during the early days of the pandemic, where folks needed masks, the price of masks, try to get masks on Amazon, anywhere else, is just triple or quadruple the price before the actual emergency happened. And Maryland did not have an anti-price gouging law. This bill, if passed, will correct that issue. It says that pretty much in case of a natural emergency declared by, or any kind of emergency declared by the governor, prices that go up 15% or more, that's considered price gouging. And there are controls against that with Senate Bill 542. So Senate Bill 542 is amended, generally prohibits a person from selling any essential good or service, including a repair or reconstruction service, for a price that exceeds 15% of the threshold during and, in some circumstances, after a state of emergency is declared. The Secretary of State must establish a system by which a person may register to receive electronic notification stating that a state of emergency has been declared and that consumer protections established by the bill are in effect, and also the categories or individual goods and services that are covered. Violation of the bill is an unfair, abusive, or deceptive trade practice under the Maryland Consumer Protection Act. So there are 2 amendments. Amendments 1 and 2 are technical. Well, I corrected. There are 3 amendments. The first 2 amendments are technical. And the third amendment strikes the definition of essential good and service and instead authorizes the governor to designate what that essential goods and service are during that particular declared state of emergency. The third amendment also adds that price gouging does not include demonstrated increased costs because of seasonal price variations and strike language authorizing an action. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments. Chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel on the amendments.
Yes, if I could ask the floor leader a
Will the floor
question.
yield?
And I certainly support the concept of this. I haven't had a chance to dive into it. Can you, in the example, say the governor puts in food and things in the emergency order. We just went through a price hike in eggs. I mean, they went way up. It was outside their control because of the flu and so forth. If that occurred during a emergency, would the food retailers not be able to increase the price more than 15%?
So there is an exception in the bill. They can increase price if the price increase comes from the wholesaler, from the producer.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendments? If not, any objections? Without objection, 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 542 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 558, Senator Gazone, Recovery Residence Grant Program Establishment, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 558 establishes a recovery residence grant program in the Department of Health to award competitive grants to recovery residences and support operations, services, and programs beginning in fiscal year 2024. The annual budget bill must include an appropriation of $500,000 for the program by December the 1st, 2024, and annually thereafter. MDH must submit a report to the Governor and the General Assembly that includes the number of grants distributed and the information about the grant recipients and programs and services provided. Amendment number 1 expands the levels of recovery residences that may apply for a grant under the program, ends the mandate of the program in fiscal year 2027, modifies the requirements a recovery resident must meet in order to qualify for a grant, and authorizes MDH to establish additional qualifications by regulation. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments in a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 558 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 581, Senator Klossmeyer, Behavioral Health Care Coordination Value-Based Purchasing Pilot Program, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Behavioral Health Care Coordination Value-Based Purchasing Pilot Program. Senate Bill 581 establishes a behavioral health care coordination value purchasing pilot program in the Department of Health. The purpose of the pilot program is to establish and implement an intensive care coordination model using value-based purchasing in the specialty behavioral health system. MDH must administer the pilot program, which must be operational for a 3-year period beginning in fiscal 2025. For the 3 years the program is operating, the governor must include an appropriation of $600,000 for the pilot program. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? On the report, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 581 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 584, Senator Guile, Public Health Parkinson's Disease Registry established, favorable, 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Parkinson's disease, as we know, is a debilitating disease that demands more research. Senate Bill 584, as amended, makes clarifying changes to the Parkinson's Disease Registry Advisory Committee and charges the committee to consult with the state-designated health information exchange, nonprofit organizations, and colleges or universities, among others, to develop a national Parkinson's disease registry. The committee will also be required to meet monthly. In addition, the health department must work with the exchange to develop a website that includes information on the incidence of Parkinson's disease in the state and possibly other disaggregated demographic information. The 2 amendments are technical: alter the title, strike the establishment of a state registry, and otherwise amend the bill as just described. The bill passed unanimously from the committee. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report. Thank you.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 584 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill. Oh, that's the end of the calendar, isn't it? Finance. Report number 20. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 162, Senator Lamb, Maryland Aviation Commission Duties, Composition, and Member Orientation, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from Howard and Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to recommit this bill to committee for purposes of further amendments.
All right. Senator moves to recommit. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 356, Senator Bidle, Transportation Citizens Committee for the Enhancement of Communities Surrounding BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport Modification, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 356 doubles the cost per flight that is currently paid. So at BWI right now, every flight and every landing pay $1, not per guest, just $1 per flight, and it's used for community projects. So Senate Bill 356 doubles it to $2 per flight and expands how this can be used. So it doubles the minimum annual funding that the Secretary must budget for projects recommended by the committee from $1 to every takeoff and landing at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport for the most recent calendar year to $2. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds a member to the committee and updates an existing requirement for committee members for the BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 356 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 511, Senator Ellis, Health and Human Services Transportation Improvement Act of 2023, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Senators, throughout Maryland, there are issues with people getting to jobs, getting to doctor's appointments, and this bill aimed to fix that problem. So Senate Bill 511, as amended, establishes a state coordinating committee for health and human services transportation in the Maryland Department of Transportation. The duties of the committee includes examining the transportation needs of state residents who are elderly, have a disability, or require transportation access to jobs, health-related appointments, senior citizens programs, or other programs requiring the transportation of individuals who qualify as transportation disadvantaged. The committee will also coordinate efforts to provide quality health and human services transportation services, devise a transportation plan, and serve as the clearinghouse for health and human services transportation coordination issues. The bill also repeals the limits on annual funding for the Maryland Senior Rides Program and the Job Access and Reverse Commute Program administered by the Maryland Transportation Administration. I had to look up what the reverse commute is. What a reverse commute is if someone lives in the urban area, goes out to work in the suburbs, and go back home in the urban area. That is defined as a reverse commute. So there are 2 amendments to this bill. Amendment 1 makes changes to the title of the bill. Amendment 2 strikes provisions that would have established a rural non-emergency medical transportation program and required an appropriation for the program. Mr. President, I move the amendments and adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 511 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 786, Senator Hedelman, Health, Reproductive Health Services, Protected Information and Insurance Requirements, favorable with 9 amendments.
Chair recognizes Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, Senate Bill 786 establishes protections related to the disclosure of information about reproductive health care by health information exchanges and electronic health networks. The bill generally prohibits these information exchanges and networks from disclosing mifepristone data and the diagnosis, procedure, medication, and related codes for abortion care and other sensitive health services to a treating provider, business entity, or another information exchange to a specific treating provider at the request and with the consent of the patient. The bill also prohibits a custodian of public records from disclosing and identifying information related to certain healthcare providers and makes a technical clarification regarding insurance coverage requirements for abortion care services. Amendment 1 makes changes to the title of the bill. Amendment number 2 alters restrictions on the disclosure of identifying information on public records. Amendments 3 and 4 make changes to the definition, alter the delay and implementation of the disclosure restrictions applicable to health information exchanges and electronic health networks, and establish the authority of the Secretary of Health to adopt regulations to implement the bill. Amendments 5 through 8 align provisions of the medical records law with disclosure protections in the bill, establish a protective healthcare commission to make recommendations to the Secretary regarding sensitive health services that should be protected, and strikes from the bill unnecessary changes to current law. Amendment number 9 establishes deadlines for the adoption of regulations to implement the bill and a reporting requirement. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 9 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the senator from the 38th district.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had a question, and then I wanted to lay over the bill according to the rules.
All right. Can we do this? Can we lay it over, and then we will maybe have conversations in between, and then we'll take it up later today, if that works.
Thank you.
All right, Senator moves to lay the bill and the amendments over under the rule. The senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lay over under the rule. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 876, Senator M. Washington, Baltimore Regional Transit Commission establishment, favorable to amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City's floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 876, as amended, established the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission, among other duties. The purpose of the commission is to provide input and engage in advocacy for the Baltimore region public transit system maintained by the Maryland Transit Administration, and review and comment on service change reports and other transit-related plans and reports. The commission will be staffed by the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. Amendment 1 makes technical changes. Amendment 2 alters the composition, duties, and procedures of the commission. I move the amendments and adoption of a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 876 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 928, Senator Griffith, Insurance Credit for Reinsurance Model Law, Reciprocal Jurisdictions, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill committee sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill deals with reinsurance, which is basically insurance for insurance companies. So Senate Bill 928 makes a technical change to the credit for reinsurance model law. This bill expressly prohibits the Maryland Insurance Commissioner from removing a reciprocal jurisdiction from the list of jurisdictions authorized to operate in the state without the need for collateral. So basically, this reinsurance is a contract between a reinsurer and an insurer, and the credit for reinsurance refers to the reduction in liabilities under regulatory accounting rules that is recognized when an insurer cedes its liabilities to a reinsurer. A bilateral agreement between the United States and the European Union and the United Kingdom eliminated reinsurance collateral requirements as a condition of domestic insurers' receipt of credit for reinsurance for EU and UK reinsurers. So historically, a reinsurer not licensed in the U.S. had to post collateral. So basically, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners revised their model, and so this bill will help us reflect the agreement. The bill conforms our law to the national model. There are no amendments. There was no opposition in the hearing. I move the adoption of the committee report.
It's clear as mud on that one, huh?
I know. That's why I tried.
Yeah. Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 928 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 929, Senator Griffith, Commissioner of Financial Regulation, Name and Organization of Office, favorable.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This, on the other hand, is a very simple bill. Senate Bill 929 renames the Office of the Commissioner of Financial Regulation under the Department of Labor as the Office of Financial Regulation. The bill also establishes the position of Deputy Commissioner for Non-Depository Activities and renames the existing Deputy Commissioner role as the Deputy Commissioner for Depository Activities, reflecting its current role in the office. There are no amendments, there's no fiscal impact, there was no opposition. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 929 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, last order of business today, or for this session, we've got special order calendar number 35. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 229, Senator Bidel, Vehicle Laws, Noise Abatement Monitoring Systems, Authorization, Use, and Penalties. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
All right, question is on the adoption of the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 229 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, Senators, we're going to stop there. We're going to hold off on the third readers and the exec noms report, and we'll take those up this afternoon. Let's say it's looking like 4 o'clock for return to the floor. So let's start with the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30 in the committee room.
All right, 1:30
for whatever we need to do.
All right. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Energy, and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Triple E Committee will meet at 1:30 for a voting session.
1:30. Budget and Tax.
So we're going to try to shoot for 1:45. So everybody please come to the committee room then. And hopefully by 4 o'clock we'll have a budget done.
All right, we hope. We hope. Good luck. If not, you know, small little detail. Chair recognizes Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet in the committee room for for voting session at 2:30.
2:30. Excellent. All right. Any other standing committees? Select committees? Chair recognizes the Protocol Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Almost forgot.
Yeah.
We actually, I guess I could have done it this evening, but we had colleagues, we have a birthday tomorrow. Permission to use the senator's name.
Senator may proceed.
Tomorrow it is Senator Sidnor's birthday, so let's all give him a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. President.
The senator keeps asking me, what are we doing on Saturday? What are we doing on Saturday? And I said, you know, it depends. We'll see. We'll see, you know. So how much do we appreciate his birthday? So, yeah, Chair recognizes the soon-to-be birthday gentleman.
Mr. President, now you understand why.
So understood. Now it all comes
wife.
together. It all, yes, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Any further business before we adjourn for this session? If not, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until 4 o'clock this afternoon. Promptly.
Promptly at 4 o'clock. Promptly. Without objection, so ordered. Have a great afternoon.